thrilled to be here. And Alicia, it's so good to see you. How are you today?
I'm very well, very well. Very happy to be here. As we said, yes, very interesting year, but I think we also have as marketers an amazing year again in front of us in terms of all of the innovation that we will be seeing as we continue to, move through these very, very, hard, but at the same time, exciting times.
We do. I agree. I have to tell you, I told my daughters are 9 and 11. I told them this morning that I was talking to you and I was talking to somebody from Nestle, and they got so excited about the idea that I'm talking to somebody who's behind their favorite chocolate chips. They're behind the Toll House brand, and they're just the idea that I'm talking to you makes me a legend. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
No, Dave. Hope you're making some great cookies this afternoon.
We're putting the chips in everything we eat these days. So yes, we're
that's
making
even
cookies
better.
and just about everything else. I thought I'd just kick it over to you to just open up. Tell us a little bit about who you are. Tell us about where you are right now, and maybe a little bit about your background, and then we can dive into some of the questions.
Sure. So I am currently our CMO for Nestle USA. I've been in this role almost 8 years, which has given me the opportunity to see fascinating change during these last years here in the US. And I came here from Mexico, so I'm also a full raised and born and raised Latino. So for all of you, within the multicultural world, buenas tardes a todos. It is great to be here. But I would tell you that over the last years, it's been fascinating to see the amount of change that we are looking in the US market. A little bit of my background is I've been with Nestle almost, I think now, 8 here in the US, total 13. So my first 5 years were in Mexico. I've been a full, brand marketer all of my life. Started at P&G, did 10 years with them, then went into consulting and a little bit of entrepreneurship. So I call it in the first internet go-go years, I went into the media trading business and was an entrepreneur. So I've had a little bit of everything and basically love the job and working with the team here at Nestle, and also the food business. I'm a foodie myself, so I disproportionately enjoy my job.
I love it. That's so awesome. 13 years, and what an awesome couple of companies beforehand as well. I thought we would let's start there. I think the idea, you said almost 8 years as a CMO. We'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, you must have, like, when we caught up last week, and I was just blown away by the depth of what you've accomplished over almost 8 years as a CMO. Can you just talk about that and talk about what you've sort of seen shift in those 8 years?
Oh yeah, it's been fascinating over the last years. When I got here, just to give you some perspective, when I got here back in the day, right, we were investing less than 10% on digital. Today, of course, we're investing more than 50%, and we are preparing, for investing a good 70% in the next couple of years. So that, that is a dramatic change in terms of how we are planning all of our marketing investments. Second, in terms of content, you can imagine that with that, again, when I came in, we were primarily focused on developing, great TV ads, as many of us. And from that, we've evolved to now having our own content studio within our company. We have an amazing team of content developers within our walls, and they're developing practically all of our digital content. So you can imagine setting up those capabilities, hiring the talent with very different kind of skills has also been fascinating. The third part has also been e-commerce, and I had really the privilege to lead our e-commerce organization for 3 years. So we've quickly accelerated our capabilities, and I'm so glad that we did. Because as was just recently said again by Jay at Petco, of course, we've all seen the surge in e-commerce, right? For us, to give you an idea, last year we had about 250 million business in e-com, which grew from 250 to 650 just this year. And we are preparing to go from there to 1 billion next year. So that is massive acceleration. And thank God we had set up, again, our capabilities in that a few years ago to make sure that we were set up in terms of the content, the investments, the marketing, of course, readiness. We had already also evolved our sales teams to think in an omni-channel way. So not separated, because of course you can imagine we started in a separated way. But again, having all of those capabilities set up has also been important. The last thing I would also tell you is that has been amazing, I think, within Nestlé has been our portfolio. So we call ourselves absolutely consumer obsessed in terms of being able to identify where our consumers are going, and then being able to understand, of course, what do they want right now. And so over these years, we practically changed about half of our product portfolio. This is massive, significant, again, change, both in terms of we went very strongly into the coffee category. So we acquired all of the Starbucks pods coffee business, as well as their businesses, which actually serve all of the coffee in campuses, in airlines. So you can imagine COVID really impacting that part of the business, but it's also been really fascinating. The other part was waters. We went very strongly into our international premium waters. And as you know, we all are in the US, we're all really excited about bubbly waters, right? Carbonated waters, and that's growing tremendously. And lastly, also new business models. So at the end of last year, we also acquired Freshly, which is a direct-to-consumer business that serves meals directly to our consumers. So it's been, I would tell you, absolutely fascinated to basically get to work with the team that I get to every day in all of these, massive changes.
That's so cool. Yeah, we are pretty obsessed with the carbonated waters. It's interesting to see that sort of shift, and even it come into my home with, again, even with my kids who have discovered it in a big way. So, all right, so 25% to soon to be 70% digital, huge shift. So as you see all this great change across these almost 8 years, I'm curious from your POV, like what is the role of a brand today?
I believe the role of a brand is much bigger than it was, again, back a few years ago. I think that consumers are demanding that our brands do much more than just the traditional functional, sort of great innovation is always at the core and great product performance, but so much more is demanded of brands today. I think brands today, of course, we all know there has been a very strong evolution into values. We are shopping brands that are consistent with our values. We are looking for brands that have a point of view in terms of society and what is happening currently and current events, that are also close and working with our communities. And importantly, of course, that they are sustainable. And I think that has really changed in terms of what brands need to stand for today. It's exciting again. But it's also very different. The other part that I would tell you is also, it's much more competitive. I think for brands in the past, we knew who we were competing against, and they were normally, same kind of category players. So for example, in our case, we would be, competing with the next guy on the shelf. Today, of course, because of e-com and the way that out of home and in-home has really blended, and especially with COVID, our competitors are so many more, small ones, big ones, restaurants, everybody. And I think that is generating tons of opportunity, but at the same time, again, really elevating the role of what brands need to stand for.
Yeah, the values piece is especially exciting, and I think we're going to hear that play out over the course of the next couple of days. And so from obviously from the point of view of Snap and our audience, this younger generation, they do have such incredible passion around values and behaviors. What from a marketer point of view, what are you noticing around this sort of trends of this younger generation?
Oh, they are extremely interested, of course, in, as you were mentioning, in those values. And how we are working with that at Nestlé is, it's extremely important what we do. yes, what we communicate, but what we communicate needs to be, sort of just telling what our actions are being and the way that we are elevating our game in terms of, again, making sure that we are identifying the footprint and the communities that are really meaningful to our brands, and making sure that we're working with those communities in terms of, having a larger footprint versus just, again, developing great foods and beverages that taste great and that have great innovation, right? So I think that is definitely one area that our younger generations are extremely interested. And what I love about Nestlé is that many times we can really have those kind of initiatives with impact at scale. We are a very, very large company. And so, for example, when you go into we call, one of our plans is a coffee plan, right? And we get to work with literally coffee growers around the world. I had the personal experience of doing that back when I was in Mexico. And we had been working with those coffee growers for 3 generations. So again, the impact that you can have is not just of a small story. It's of, again, a large story in which you can team up to make significant impact. And I think that is really exciting. Our younger generations, I think beyond sustainability, of course, and communities, they're also much more multicultural. If you think about anybody in the US that is 18 years or younger, multicultural is actually going to be our majority. So we are majority, again, majorly multicultural in everybody underneath 18. And that also brings a very different opportunity for us, because even the food that they're interested, of course, is going to be much more ethnically inspired, as well as they're looking for bolder flavors. And of course, they're looking for that understanding and empathy in terms of culture that is also, again, very different from, previous generations.
Yep. No, that's awesome. I get excited and just passionate about the future when I look at some of the surveys and insights and data just around this younger generation. We look at stats that say north of 80% of our audience they just believe they have a personal responsibility to create change, to create the change in the world they want to see, and that's awesome when we think about what the future that we want to make and leave behind.
I think it's something that I think personally for us, and also back into the workforce, right? I have the opportunity to work with an amazing team, very young, as you say, and I love how they bring their personal, as you say, passion into the work they do, and to really make sure that and they challenge me a lot, and I love that in terms of making sure that we're making this meaningful progress that they want to see. And I think that is extremely exciting, and that they will have a very, very strong mark in terms of how, of course, we continue to evolve.
Yep, that's right. That's the hope. I want to build, you mentioned commerce before and the huge growth in commerce over the last few years, but especially over the last 12 months. As we look at, the way that just traditional shopping has, turned into this, how are you keeping up? What is Nestlé doing to reach the people that are buying via that mobile device?
Well, we're reaching out in every kind of way possible, right? So as we were talking about, everything from working with our retailers, as you can imagine, especially in 2020, we saw them innovate in dramatic ways to be able to access consumers, again, through the mobile. Everything from what we were just listening from Jay in Petco in terms of, standing up next day delivery, standing up, curbside pickup, et cetera, et cetera. So in our world, of course, we had to be prepared, especially from a supply chain standpoint, and being able to get them the product that they need in the way that they need. On the consumer side, we did massive work in terms of our content, as you can imagine. We have more than 1,500 SKUs. And in order for us to be able to be a partner to our retailers, we had to get our content into a way that is greatly consumed by, of course, all of our consumers. And even with you, if you think about with Snapchat and all of the partners, we've seen massive, changes in what we call social shopping from our consumers. And so we started investing very, very strongly into these new ways in which we could get our information to our consumers as they were shifting the way that they, traditionally discovered products to much more online journeys. So that's just an example, right, in terms of how we have been doubling down across all the different areas that are required to accelerate e-commerce.
Yeah, I'm getting a few questions that are coming in around technologies. Are there new technologies? Obviously, there's one that's super near and dear to my mind around augmented reality. But I'm curious, from your point of view, are there new technologies that you're deploying to help you in the marketing mix?
Oh, yes, I would tell you that we definitely are. And as you mentioned, yes, augmented reality is one of them. And we have been partnering with you in terms of leveraging AR. But we're always very focused in terms of making sure that as we look into new technologies, that we are thinking about the business problem that we want to solve for our consumer, right? How is this technology going to improve the experience for them so that they really see the value of it? And I think the example that we have in terms of what we did, especially with you guys in Snap, was fantastic. Specifically, the team, of course, went in and on our Häagen-Dazs brand, it was its 60th anniversary. And we used your technology to be able to have an AR frame that then led them immediately into a ice cream shop, right? That they could browse, of course, through AR. And that was fantastic because for them, it was value. We had tremendous results. And we are continuing to experiment with tons of technology. Another one, which we will be able to share results soon, is conversational AI. So our team is really going deep into seeing how we can leverage that technology to, help, with our consumers, be able to get that closer engagement in a way that is significant for them. As you can imagine, in foods, there is a lot of recommendations that happen, especially with some of our categories. And hopefully very very soon we will be releasing pretty interesting stuff there.
Yeah, I love the thinking about the value to the consumer. You've said it a couple of times, and I think it's such an important insight to remember, the customer obsessed sort of approach that you take. I mean, we think about maybe a few years ago, AR was about putting something funny over your face. Today, AR can be about maybe trying on a pair of shoes or scanning the label of a product or looking to see what that piece of furniture may look like in my small apartment. And so you start to think about these incredible utility use cases.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure, yeah.
We're all over that, if you can imagine. It is all about the utility, and we call it the value exchange. And if you think about, in general, digital, everything has to be around the value exchange, right? And the utility value. Even if you think about our content, and I think we've already been doing this, right? But evolving our content to really solve for those either questions or needs that the consumer has. In our case, many times, of course, is great recipes, but making sure that we are providing that value so that we can then have, and build these long-term relationships that we all want to have with, our consumers. The more useful we are, of course, the better they will be. And I think with technology, with new technology, that is particularly important because sometimes we get extremely excited about the technology itself versus its utility and the problems that it's solving. And I'm really proud that our team is always looking, the inverse.
Yep, yeah, it's so perfect. And I'm going to borrow the value exchange. I like that a lot. I like that one a lot. I'm getting a few questions.
Sure.
You mentioned before, you talked about your team, and I think that sparked a few questions from the audience around, and I'll just read one. As leaders, we're always developing, you're always developing your abilities. And so what are the skills that you'd like your marketing team to develop in 2021?
Number one, we will continue to develop very strong agility, guys. I think going forward, agility is disproportionately important. Our environment will continue to be, changing constantly. As I mentioned, everything from, who are we competing against? At Nestlé, we talk sometimes also around the competitor we can't see, right? It's not the next guy on the shelf. That's not the guy that's going to come in and challenge our business model. It's the competitor we're not probably seeing. At the same time, as I just mentioned, also the agility for continuing to transform our business into a business that will be primarily digital, primarily e-commerce in the next years. It requires very different kind of thinking. It also requires for us, and I think we've heard that a lot lately, right? Learning agility and being again, making sure that we don't have frames that we say, hey, I know it all. I think right today we know everything but all. We're on the opposite side. We have to be constant learners every single day. That's one that I would tell you. And of course, more from a technical standpoint, we're going to be absolutely doubling down in digital and e-commerce capabilities. And also in analytics. I mean, in the previous session, I think it was extremely important. We've also been investing significantly in analytics so that we can become much more predictive in terms of, leveraging the different levers that we have to generate demand. And that is something that we will continue to train our marketers on.
Got it. So agility, digital, and sort of commerce expertise, analytics, all makes sense. I know there's a lot of energy right now in terms of leading around COVID and leading around working from home. So I'm seeing a few questions around that.
Yes,
are there things you're doing as a leader to sort of keep the teams motivated as we continue to be in this work from home situation?
Absolutely, have been fully intentional about it. And last week when we of course launched the year, when I talked to my leadership team, we are continuing to invest in that. Last year, of course, things that I think you all saw, right? Much more communications. Before I used to have a monthly meeting with my leadership team. I have, we started it with COVID, but that turned into weekly meetings, and they are much more agile again, right? We're adapting. They're much shorter. With our full team, of course, much more communication since last year. And also we did events. We did online events that helped us, strengthen our team as a community, especially to be much more resilient, given everything that's been happening. And unfortunately, as we all know, 2021 did not start, ending 2020 and saying, hey, it's a clean start. So we are continuing with that. We are going to be, I set up for my full team already just a kickoff event at the end of January. And we are expecting to continue that at least through September. Because again, if things get, better faster, great. But if not, we absolutely need to be intentional about keeping close, maximizing, of course, the support for our teams, and driving that agility and the energy. I think that right now it is extremely important that we intentionally, again, build the energy throughout the team.
Yep. Awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to go back to the work. You wrote a blog right after the new year. And one of the things I noticed in the blog was the mention of some of the collaboration work that you've got, the Takashi work with Perrier. I'm curious your point of view. It feels like maybe collaborations they were a thing in 2020. Do they continue? Do they grow in terms of the way you're thinking about?
I think they will. I think collaborations are absolutely here and to stay. I think it is a way that, can bring additional value to our consumers. And again, we're very proud of the collaboration that we did with our Waters team on Perrier and having, pairing up with great designers, right? It's so fantastic for that brand. But equally so, I would tell you that you will continue to see us with other brands expanding collaborations because they enable us to bring a freshness to the brand's relevance to younger consumers in ways that are absolutely I would say, more and more prevalent within our, I think within the times. If you think at any brand, I think you're seeing collaborations, all across. Probably got started, YouTubers, as you know, are all about collaborations, and I think that has quickly expanded into the brand world very, very fast.
Cool. Yeah, and I think it sort of builds on this question that just came in from the audience, which is what can heritage, I'm going to read it the way it's written. What can heritage brands learn from newer digital first brands when it comes to authentically marketing to Gen Z?
Oh, I think that we have so much to learn, because I think those brands have taught us the fact that you do not need mass media, that it is much more, that of course that they have inverted the way in which you build brands for us, that you start, of course, by clearly defining sort of, again, who you are, what you are about, by opening up your communication much more, by building it every day through social media platforms, and again, by your behaviors, and that, and that it is much more of a living relationship versus, I think, what legacy brands have been. What I think has been extremely interesting to see is how, the paths are, or the gaps that we had in the beginning are sort of, shortening and shortening and shortening as, sort of smaller brands either become bigger or are acquired by large companies, and also legacy brands become more and more and more authentic as we move along. Because I think that authenticity is something that any brand will require in the future.
Yeah, it's a must, right? It's
a must.
You can't fool the consumer anymore.
Exactly.
Maybe you never could, but now it's.
I don't think you could. I think it's just that technology opens so many ways to do that in more meaningful ways, probably, than we thought. And when you're having very, very big volumes, of course, traditional media has always been very, effective in what it achieves.
Yeah, that's right. And then there was a question about Freshly, and like, are there learnings from Freshly in terms of what you can sort of apply to the rest of your brands?
We're all over that. And we just recently acquired it at the end of the year. But part of why we acquired it is because of our interest in understanding much more about the business model, and then what we can reapply for the rest of our businesses, and also creating potentially new, direct-to-consumer businesses, in our future.
Yep, that makes sense. I guess we got about 7 or 8 minutes. Questions are still coming in. I'm gonna just go back to some of my questions. As you think about let's step out of Nestlé for a second. Like,
sure.
What great marketing in 2020? Are there campaigns that you're looking at, with just admiration?
Yes, I think that I think that in 2020, what was fascinating, I think, is we saw also this evolution that I was just, mentioning to you, of what would be our traditional legacy brands back into being very, their role continuing to evolve. So, of course, I think the work that had been done by Nike in the past, but it has really come back to the stage. And I think in 2020, we saw amazing work from them. I also really like the work done by Budweiser, and the way that they are coming also back with a much stronger purpose, the way that they thought about the brand, I think was also pretty fascinating. I do think, though, that some of the new business models, I particularly really like the work that Airbnb does, and even the way that they have gone through, COVID, and how they have rethought. They had a very big challenge in 2020 as their whole category sort of imploded. But the way that they think about, again, the role of the brand, when you ask me about the role of the brand, the way that they think about the role of their brand in consumers' lives, and how, they have been continuing to nurture it through 2020 to come back in a very strong way as the market reopens, I think has been fascinating.
Yep, I totally agree with that. All of the three you just mentioned. All right, we're wrapping up. We're down to the final 5 minutes. We'll go back to some of the questions around leadership and personnel. We got a question around skill sets and expertise as you're looking to hire people. Like, are there things now? You mentioned a few before. Are there other things that when it comes to hiring people that you're looking for right now?
We have, I think, our hiring profile has all, I mean, over the last years, we've also really defined it as an achiever profile. So it's not that we're hiring with very specific, I would tell you, technical skills, because we believe that, of course, you do have to have a very strong foundation of both, I would say, creativity on one side and analytics on the other side, right? So I think we are talking about pretty ambidextrous talent. At the same time, what we're most interested about is this achiever profile, which I think for our younger generations, as we were just discussing, is something that we want the people that want to go out and change the world. And of course, that want to join us. And together, of course, we can provide those opportunities for them to go and change the world. And of course, help us grow our business and change the world together. But I would tell you, more than the skill sets themselves, we are really interested in that achiever profile that, is very agile and that wants to, change the world at speed.
Yeah, the change the world part is so awesome. It so well matches to the values you talked about earlier, and the values, and then that authenticity that you try to communicate to the consumer. So that makes a ton of sense to hear that. I guess maybe a last question. 2020 was 2020. Like, any big bets, any big predictions for 2021? Anything you're just like thinking about that's a little bit different that might, we might look back and go, yep, that happened in 2021?
Well, I think there's two areas, and I think one was just being discussed by Jay at Petco, right? We do expect all of our retailers to continue to double down in new contactless ways to reach the consumer. We know that when we look back at 2021, if we, and when we look at our 1 billion, hopefully, of e-commerce volume, it will be driven by that, right? Because they will continue to innovate significantly, of course, to accelerate their e-com part of the business. The other part that I would tell you is plant-based, food. I think we are expecting, and we're betting very strongly, especially among the, all generations, but I think we're all becoming what we call flexitarians, right? And we saw a big thing now in January in terms of, what was it called? Vegan January or something. But again, we are all moving towards, I think, a redefinition of what modern health is. And we're looking for more meatless options in general. Not necessarily are we going to become vegans, but I think we're all looking for, more plant-based foods. We saw that continue to increase in 2020, and I would tell you that we are estimating that it will accelerate its growth in 2021.
Yeah, that's I think that's clear, especially in reading your blog post and talking about the plant-based and hearing and reading about your sustainability focus. It feels like that's a no-brainer. It seems like the consumer's up for that in a big way.
Yeah. We also, over the last 2 or 3 years in that area, because we believe that is going to continue to be a very strong area of growth for us, we bought a full vegetarian frozen meals brand, which is Sweet Earth. It does fantastic meals, again, very also ethnically inspired in terms of its taste profile. So really well, I would say, future-proofed. And we saw that brand, again, last year grow at 40%. So you can imagine we are seeing that, that acceleration. We're also going into the Impossible burgers with our awesome burger and competing in that space too. And so we do think that is going to continue to accelerate. We've also seen it in our coffee creamers portfolio. So we have Natural Bliss under Coffee Mate, and it also offers plant-based creamers. And we've seen that also continue to accelerate dramatically. So again, we are seeing that, and we will continue to double down, right? Because we do think that there are just awesome, awesome products that we, that we are creating in that space.
Yeah, they are. No, they are. And thank you for doing that. I'm expecting David to pop back in here any second to help us wrap up. But I just wanted to say thank you for being a great partner to us and for being a great partner to the community and for all you're doing with your values and frankly for teaching me a whole bunch of stuff in the last 40 minutes. This was fun. This was great to do this.
Thank you, Dave. It was extremely fun.
This was wonderful. Thank you both. Alicia, I hope that we can bring our community back to Nestlé headquarters one day when the vaccine is fully rolled out and we can get back to real world events and seeing each other in person. But until then, it's been a pleasure having you on a virtual stage. David, always great to see you, and thank you both so much. So this was wonderful.